Hey, I am Madeline Greenburg, and this is Hello Precarity COVID FML edition. I want to thank the Brown Arts Initiative and Sydney Skybetter for making this opportunity possible. I am so thrilled to have with me Lauren Slone, the MAP Fund Program Manager, artist, culture warrior, and world-traveled choreographic thinker, self-described. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me virtually today.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I'm already sort of blushing about those descriptors. Culture warrior. I've been called that. That's amazing.
No, absolutely. That's our new term because we are really fighting for our survival at this point. And you seem to be at the forefront of this. So beyond my basic descriptors, do you want to sort of explain who you are and what you do in your day-to-day, usually, and then versus now?
Versus now. What was the time that I was doing thing versus now? I would say generally part of the way that I think about trying to contribute or to serve the field is sort of as a choreographic thinker, which for me that really just means that I have a lot of background and training both in terms of dance practice as a performer, as a maker. I also have a really significant background in philosophy, comparative religious history, logic, systems assessment. So there's a way that I think about our field systems from a choreographic frame in terms of supporting people's pathways, in terms of supporting how folks imagine and build those visions. So that's like kind of the thing that I love to work on and love to contribute. The hats that currently falls under are at MAP Fund, as you described. And then I also serve in kind of advisory capacities to various groups working in the field, from independent producers to educators building new curricula to respond to evolving trends in contemporary performance. So I kind of enjoy channeling energy in a lot of different directions, but with that kind of guise leading me.
Absolutely. So it's almost bodies in space, but also digitally.
Mm-hmm.
Which sets you up for this time a little bit. So how have you been transitioning into this new everything's online dynamic?
Yeah, remarkably, I would say. MAP shifted into a remote working style several years ago, actually, as a way to support each of our employees, like desire to participate in different communities, desire to show up in different spaces, etc., and to honor the individual. So we have actually a deep and long practice of working online in terms of our structures. So that to me is lucky and doesn't feel terribly different. What is a little bit different about what I'm focusing on right now is future visioning in terms of what are the infrastructures we're going to build for the field moving forward? What does project-based support mean? Which MAP has an ongoing question with that anyways, but it really needs to be completely reevaluated at this point. And then to sort of segue to another aspect of the focus of our conversation, I've been contributing along with the coalition members to Artist Relief, just some of the skills that MAP has and expertise MAP has to organizing emergency relief on behalf of the field. So that has also been occupying a bit of my time in the immediate.
So yeah, speaking of Artist Relief, right? So would you go into a little bit about what is Artist Relief? How do you apply? I think it's really nice to have this very basic overlook before you go into sort of why it's so important right now.
Yeah, so I would say, first and foremost, Artist Relief is essentially a group of grant makers. It's 7 coalition partners that have come together to create an emergency initiative that offers financial and informational resources to artists right now. What that translates into is $5,000 in unrestricted support grants to artists who are particularly facing dire financial emergencies due to COVID-19 right now. In terms of defining artist, there is a very broad definition of who might fall under that categorization. And there are 10 disciplines currently reflected. In the frequently asked question space, there's a clearer delimiter of, for example, within dance, that encompasses all forms, that encompasses performer, generative, choreographer, all of these sort of field distinctions, right? So there's definitely a lot more clarity if anyone wanted to go to artistrelief.org to see what the minimum eligibility and practice descriptors are. But that's really the basis. I feel like I would be remiss also to just literally name out the 7 coalition partners who are working in a deeply non-hierarchical and collaborative way. The intent is really to just bring skill sets together to help scale this up and make it move with integrity quickly to artists. So the coalition members are Academy of American Poets, Artadia, Creative Capital, Foundation for Contemporary Arts, Mount Fund, National Young Arts Foundation, and United States Artists. So that's pretty much what it is.
Right, and I want to both mention that it says on the website, and it's probably worth talking about, sort of that interdisciplinary artists. Hold on, you're frozen. Oh no. There you are. Hello. The flaws of the system.
Am I here again?
Now I can hear you. I know.
Picture.
I know, honestly.
I see you very well now.
There you are. Ay. Yay, good. You're back. Ay, what a mess. I feel like this is every meeting. Oh no. Ay.
Our best.
Yeah, I know. I can hear you again. That's all right. Okay, no sudden movements. Hey, all right. There we go.
Hi.
Hello. Oh, what a mess. All right. Yes. So I'm in the mountains, which essentially means I've decided to hide away in North Carolina for the time being.
Awesome.
Yes, it's been unbelievably nice because you can still go hiking and run into no one. But it also means that my Wi-Fi is not wonderful.
That's quite all right.
But let's pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah.
As one does.
You're just going.
Exactly. So I wanted to mention, jumping back in, that it is running through September 2020, right? And you're continuing in different subsets, essentially, to allocate money to different applications. And there's a series over a couple of months. You want to go into a little bit about that timeline?
Yeah, so essentially, currently, Artist Relief has fundraised at the level of funding 100 artists per week through September. So there's 5 application cycles in Submittable, but our review process runs week to week. So there's no pause in the actual mechanism of distributing dollars to artists every week. It's mostly to help Submittable handle the volume.
Fair.
It's significant.
Oh boy. So in terms of your job, and are you on the actual board that's going through the applications and deciding where funds are being allocated?
In terms of that review process, so essentially applications are reviewed on a week-to-week basis with Artist Relief Coalition partners and representatives from collaborating cultural organizations across the country. Essentially, after a review, qualifying applications, which are vetted for eligibility, are selected via a lottery process for funding each week. So it's not so much like no one is positioning, looking at a docket, for example, and saying this person has more need under this circumstance than this person. It's that there is an eligibility vet, and then there is a lottery process to select among those. In terms of my role specifically, I wouldn't say that I, have a like a job title. I mean, this really is a deeply collaborative organizing effort, and I'm kind of showing up every day and offering brain trust, or offering like, this is what I have experienced in my work with Submittable, or this is what I have experienced in my work with remote review processes. And so I'm really showing up to help problem solve anywhere, everywhere. And I would argue that everyone is bringing that with their own respective zones of expertise.
Right. And in terms of the work that you've actually already done at Map Fund, you were in charge of sort of making sure that that process of organizing people and applications was the most considerate of different backgrounds, right? Already, that was part of your experience?
Yeah. I would say that I work within our MAP team, of course, to continuously iterate and adapt our application and review processes to further align our equity goals with the actual practice of selection. And we have also, within the past couple of years, transferred our review process to an all remote process for a lot of reasons, including accessibility, including bringing in many more perspectives to review who would otherwise not be able to take 3 days off to fly to New York to sit at a table, right? So it is a bit fortuitous that MAP has had the experience of thinking through some of those things, although we haven't thought about them at the scale per se. But yeah, we have some reference points to bring ideas to the table around that.
That's really wonderful. And in terms of scale, how many people do you see applying per day? Is it really unmanageable at this point, or is it a constant flow?
It's a pretty constant flow. Cycle 1 will have seen 55,000 applications.
Wow. So it's everybody really is on teamwork and making sure that the process is being completed as quickly and as easily and safely as possible.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, the number one thing was trying to figure out balancing ease for applicants who are facing inordinate circumstances across the country right now, and not making that a burdensome process to the degree that we can manage that.
Right. Which makes sense. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, especially when there's so many things that you're supposed to be signing up for right now. It's hard to put another thing on the plate.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I've definitely been experiencing this overload of like, it's both amazing, the level of organizations and individuals who are like gathering all the resources and making them into a list and like making sure everybody knows about it and all of that. I think that's like a beacon of hope actually right now, that folks are taking that on and working so hard to share it so widely. The micro flip of that for me is this overwhelm of like, I don't know if I can take in like one more email about which thing to think about, which group is organizing. Like there is this sense of like total overwhelm in terms of trying to stay on top of who is trying to do what and how to let the right community know, that this is available, or et cetera.
Right. Especially when communities right now are being thrown together, it seems, right? Like there's no precedence for the way that this is all sort of coming together. And so in terms of reaching that list and saying, these are the things I actually fit into, it's almost impossible at this point.
Yeah. But I do think the effort of endeavoring to get information centralized and shared as widely as possible, even within, improvisational frameworks right now.
Yes.
is amazing and needed.
Absolutely. So then in terms of the way that you've sort of seen the arts community step up and fill these immediate needs, are there any projects that you've individually found really powerful and that you want to highlight outside maybe of Artist Relief and Map Fund itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's hundreds of emergency relief efforts. So on the grant making side, there's just no shortage of seeing those pop up in organizations that otherwise provide emergency support already, or organizations that have never taken that on. I'm seeing a lot of that. But one of the things I actually wanted to highlight, which is, it's not from the funding community, is Fusebox Festival, which is taking place this weekend. And I think part of what I'm inspired by is they have always been a live gathering festival across their history. And rather than say we're going to cancel this year in terms of honoring everyone's health, they said, well, what if we take this opportunity to reimagine practice, to reimagine festival, to start to gather folks into conversation about the future of practice. And let's just experiment with the form of distributing ideas digitally right now and support those artists that would have otherwise come and presented live work. So I find that a deeply inspiring pivot in this moment. And it starts tonight, actually. It runs tonight through Sunday. So it's free and available online, fuseboxfestival.org. I don't work for Fusebox. I'm not plugging it.
Right.
In that way,
totally like anonymous. Yes. We love it, but we're not involved. Please go see. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so fun. And then in terms of, you spoke a little bit about how seeing people come together and create these lists and share them is making you hopeful. Is there anything else that you're seeing that people around you are doing, or that you yourself have been able to sort of complete, even while procrastinating and stressing is part of everyday life? Is there anything that you've sort of found very providing of hope, very hopeful?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it, I'll zoom more deeply into the personal on this one, which is connection, period. Every time I have a text from a friend who says like, hey, you're on my mind. Are you okay? Do you need something? It's like a hope injection, like immediately, every single time. And it reminds me to stop and pause and turn around and redistribute that back out in terms of my circle of checking in. And I would admit that I'm the first person to describe myself as a little bit of I love these puzzles. My mind loves them. I love working, honestly. And I can find myself working and never checking in with people and realize 2 weeks later that I have not connected with another soul. And this moment of like, what is important? Like, talking to my family today is important. That is really hope-inducing for me. Whether the tenor of the conversation is sad or scared or stressed or joyful, it's mostly the reaching out. And I think, I have grown up in dance studios, in liveness, in the theater, like right next to human beings. And while my cell phone is no replacement for any of that, I am trying to really experience what I do have available to me, which is this kind of format, and use that as a hope generating source.
Absolutely. And I think it really reminds you, or me at least as well, about how much our network exists beyond just networking.
Oh,
which has been a wonderful thing. I mean, I have people I'm reaching out to from years ago who I know are in New York City, and all of a sudden they're at the top of my mind. And there's just so many people that make that list that you forget about until there's this need for a hope injection, as you said, which is so beautiful.
yeah.
So I guess my final question for you, and to sort of wrap it all up and put it a little bit more in the college realm, is if you had to tell yourself at the precipice of graduation a word of advice, what would that advice be? Looking at where you are now, but also where you were then.
Okay, so this will tell you a lot about me as a person. Do you mind if I have 5 short bullet points of advice
Please,
here?
no, that sounds fantastic, and they will be saved for my posterity, so please.
Okay, okay. This one mattered to me a whole lot, as other conversations you and I have had pre-COVID, in terms of stepping from this institutional infrastructure to a moment of orienting to non-institutional support and figuring out how to build a life. And I think I've tried to create a couple of bullet points that I think actually still hold true pre-COVID and now. So these are some of the things that came to mind from this question. One is personal budgeting. And I know that sounds super lame, actually, but my 19-year-old self, my 21-year-old self had no idea how to make a budget, had no idea how to articulate need or what good savings practices are. And I think had I had the wherewithal to start thinking even at that point about, before you go and buy more costumes right now, build your emergency savings. Just have it. Yeah, the filter of money, particularly within our field, and good practices of self-sustainment in an economy like ours, which is so gig-based and cash flow being such a question. Budgeting feels like essential. Not just feels like, is essential. So that would be one. Less logistics and more deeper internal work. Lauren, get honest with yourself about what you want and need in terms of actually sustaining a practice. So what I mean by that is what is my inventory of things that are already available to me to make? I have a room, I have a floor, I have enough space to, I could configure a floor bar in here rather than, dancing across the studio floor or something like that. What are the things I don't have yet? Why don't I list those out? And can I get really clear about what that is and why I need it? Do I need other collaborators to make? Yes or no? And it's not a judgment, it's just an honesty. Do I need tools to make? Yes or no? And prioritize them in a sequence that you can slowly acquire them for yourself over time. How much of my practice can be self-contained, adaptive, and certainly it's on some level insulated from disruption? In what way does this moment mean that I can actually still work because I have a sense of what I need to do it? And I think part of that is also getting honest about my own self-doubt as part of the inventory that gets in the way of continuing to work. To that end, I would also add a third bullet point, which is, Lauren, see how you can orient towards doing rather than fear about being. And by that, I really mean I spent a good decade worried about being an artist, which really underneath that is whether or not other people will see me that way. And being so anxious about that, I wasn't doing any work. I wasn't actually doing artist. that's a decade of
Right.
fear, right?
How are you going to be an artist if you don't do artistry?
Exactly. So putting the effort into the making and not so much the how will I be seen space. Fourth bullet point, I think, and this is connected to what you were mentioning before in terms of networks, is like, who is your inner counsel? Like, get real honest about your inner counsel. And, you know, for me, this means the kind of individual, and I have a really small group of them, maybe three. Lauren, I see you. I understand why you're procrastinating, but it's time to stop, you know? Or these folks honor that I am insecure. These folks honor that I have shame and guilt. And they also ask me to step forward into growth at the same time. And they see me through the roughness of that transition, right? And I think it has taken me maybe 2 decades, and I don't know that I'm even that good at it yet, to differentiate between those who ought to be in that inner cabinet and those relationships sustained for a lifetime versus those who only want to see one aspect of who I am, and to not go to them with my deepest humanity and vulnerability.
Right.
We can still be friends, but they don't have to be the inner counsel. Like, cultivate that inner counsel. And the last bullet point, it would be, and I think it's, again, connected to all of these others, is just turning up the volume on my internal knowing. I have turned it down so many times to listen to teachers, mentors, ex-partners, and ultimately followed their projections of who I am or what they thought I was capable of. And I don't regret any of those pathways, but it is becoming increasingly clear to me that I want to listen to myself and follow that pathway and see where that takes me for a while.
That's really incredible. And all of these things, I think, especially when stepping into the world for the first time, sound big, but needed. And I think that that's really what's been going on around me and in my own head right now. You know, this time we're surrounded by people who are going into a field that's on pause. And it's not, maybe the support isn't, right? The artists aren't, we don't just stop being artists because we can't make the work that we normally make. But the ideas surrounding what is bodies in space, they just don't exist right now. And so it's really wonderful to hear these 5 very bullet pointed, helpful statements of fact, because they're very real and they're very doable in a time when not a lot is. So thank you.
And that's the genius of artistic work, in terms of, okay, it might not be bodies in space, but I am an imaginative human being that can still find a way to express that.
Right. And it's, I see the world in this way and I want it to come together. So how do I do that? Especially when I can't come together with the people that would otherwise have been in this space with me. Right? It's the inner counsel of not just how I make decisions and pull myself out of something, but also how I make the work that I need to make.
And trusting that you have that inside already.
Right. Well, we're working on that one.
That's like life work. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Lauren, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time during this unprecedented moment to share your experiences and shed some light on the ways that artists are manifesting new work and how the community is protecting itself. I so appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about your work and the amazing steps you've personally taken to assist artists during the pandemic and beyond. I want to close out with saying, for Hello Precarity, COVID FML edition, I'm Madeline Greenburg. Thank you for listening, and I hope to not see you in these conditions again.
Thank you so much, Madeline. It's absolutely my honor to be here today.